The boy of the deep forest, the child of silence. Deep within a forest untouched by men, where the trees whispered ancient secrets and rivers sang lullabies, lived a boy known only as Kojo. No one knew where he came from. Some said the forest's spirits raised him. Others believed he was the only survivor of a forgotten tragedy. Kojo grew up alone. He learned to hunt not with weapons, but with patience. He drank from streams, slept under the stars, and spoke to animals as if they were family. The monkeys guided him to fruit. The birds warned him of danger. Even the wind seemed to understand his silence. But Kojo was not like the forest. He had questions. Why was he alone? Why did his heart ache whenever he saw distant smoke rising beyond the trees? And one day, he followed that smoke. The town of fear. Beyond the forest lay a town called Asumaya, but it was not a place of joy. A dark calamity had fallen upon it. Crops withered overnight. Children fell mysteriously ill. At night, a strange wind howled, carrying whispers no one could understand. Fear ruled the town. When Kojo emerged from the forest, barefoot and wild, the villagers were terrified. "Spirit boy!" they shouted. "Forest demon!" They chased him away with stones. But one old woman, Nkunim, saw something different. "Not a demon," she whispered. "A child, sent for a reason." The hidden truth. Kojo didn't understand their language well, but he understood pain. He saw the sick children. He felt the dying land. And that night, as the cursed wind rose again, Kojo did something no one expected. He walked toward it, into the darkness, beyond the edge of the town, back into the forest. The wind led him to a place even the animals feared. A giant, ancient tree split in half. From its hollow core, a black smoke pulsed like a beating heart. The forest spoke to Kojo then, not in words, but in feeling. The balance had been broken. Years ago, the townspeople had cut sacred trees, disturbing something ancient, and now the forest was fighting back. The boy who stood alone. Kojo stepped forward. The dark force rose like a shadow, twisting, roaring, alive. But Kojo did not run. He placed his hand on the broken tree. For the first time in his life, he spoke, not in human language, but in the language of the forest. The wind stopped. The animals gathered. The ground trembled. Light burst from Kojo's body, pure, calm, powerful. The darkness fought, then slowly faded. The tree began to heal. The storm disappeared. The savior they rejected. Morning came. The town of Asumaya awoke to something they hadn't seen in months. Peace. The air was clean. The children began to recover. The crops stood tall again. And at the edge of the forest lay Kojo, weak, silent. The same villagers who once chased him now carried him gently. Nana Isi smiled. "I told you," she said softly. "He came for a reason." The boy who belonged to two worlds. Kojo never fully became like the townspeople. He was a bridge, a world between the human sounds and the whispers of the forest. The price of balance. Kojo did not wake for 3 days. The people of Asumaya waited, not with fear this time, but with quiet hope. Nana Isi stayed by his side, wiping his forehead with cool water, whispering soft words he may or may not have understood. "Child of the forest, come back to us." On the 4th morning, Kojo opened his eyes, but something had changed. The forest was no longer just a place he came from. He could feel it, even here in the heart of the town. Every rustle of leaves, every shift of wind, every distant cry of an animal. It was inside him now. But peace never comes without a price. That same evening, Kojo stepped outside Nanaisi's hut and froze. The wind had returned, not violent like before, but restless, uneasy, calling him from the forest. Kojo walked back to the edge of the trees. This time, the villagers did not stop him. They watched in silence, trusting him, fearing what it might mean. Deep within the forest, Kojo found the great tree again. It was no longer broken, but it was not whole either. A faint darkness still lingered within its bark, like a scar that refused to disappear. The forest spoke to Kojo then, not in words, but in warning. Balance had been restored, but not sealed. What was awakened could return, stronger, wiser, more dangerous. Kojo placed his hand on the tree once more, and this time, he understood something he hadn't before. He was not just a protector, he was a guardian, and guardians do not rest. When he returned to Asumaya, his eyes carried a quiet weight. Nanaisi noticed immediately. "What did you see?" she asked. Kojo hesitated. Then, slowly, he spoke. His voice was rough, unfamiliar, as though unused for years. "Not over." The old woman nodded. "I feared as much." From that day on, Kojo's life changed again. He began to learn the ways of the people, their language, their customs, their stories. But he never lost the forest. At night, he would disappear into the trees, listening, watching, waiting. And sometimes, when the wind passed through Asumaya just a little too cold, when the leaves whispered just a little too loudly, Kojo would stand still, eyes fixed on the darkness, as if something was watching back. The shadow that learned. The forest was no longer quiet, not truly. Even when the birds sang, even when the leaves danced gently in the wind, something beneath it all had changed. Kojo could feel it, watching, waiting, learning. Far beyond the great tree, deeper than even Kojo had ever gone, there was a place where light rarely touched the ground, a place the animals avoided, a place where silence was not peace, but warning. There, the darkness had not died. It had just retreated. It remembered the boy, the light, the pain of being driven back. And now, it was curious, not angry, not yet, but aware. One night, Kojo awoke suddenly. No wind, no sound. Not even the insects dared to move. That was how he knew. Something was wrong. He stepped outside. The village lay still under the moonlight. Too still. Kojo's eyes scanned the shadows, and then he saw it. At the far end of the village, a figure. Tall, shifting, not quite human, not quite smoke. It did not attack. It did not move. It simply watched him, the same way he had once watched the world. Kojo took a step forward. The figure tilted his head, learning, mimicking, understanding. Then, in a voice that sounded like wind through broken branches, it spoke. Kojo. Kojo froze. It knew his name. The villagers began to stir. A child cried from inside a hut. The moment broke. The shadow flickered and vanished. By morning, the village was restless. People whispered of bad dreams, of feeling watched, of hearing their names carried on the wind. Nanaisi listened carefully. Then she looked at Kojo. "It has seen you," she said quietly. Kojo nodded. "It learns." That day, Kojo did something he had never done before. He gathered the villagers, all of them, men, women, children. They stood uncertain, watching the boy they once feared, now the one they depended on. Kojo struggled with the words, but he forced them out. Forest, not enemy, he said slowly. Forest, hurt. He pointed toward the trees. You hurt it first. Silence fell. The truth was heavy. An elder stepped forward. We were only trying to survive, he said. Kojo nodded. I know. Then he placed his hand on his chest. Now, it tries too. That night, Kojo did not go into the forest alone. For the first time, the people of Asumaya followed him. They reached the great tree. The air felt thick,